For the next way to quickly graph a line, we're going to have our equation of the line in what's called standard form. So the standard form equation of a line looks a little different than the slope-intercept form. It does not give us a direct point or direct slope. It's written in the form of ax plus by equals c. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to show you a quick way to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, which are the places where the graph crosses both the x and the y-axis. And then once you do that, you can plot those 2 points, and since 2 points define a line, you can quickly graph the line. Now, if you feel like this particular equation is not going to give you any ugly fractions, and you can quickly convert it to slope-intercept form, that would actually probably be the easiest and quickest way to graph the line. But we're just going to go ahead and teach you the method and process of using standard form. So what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to get both the x-intercept and the y-intercept values. Now keep in mind how these points would be written. So if you look at the y-intercept and the x-intercept, the y-intercept would be written as a point 0 and then whatever the y value is. And then the x-intercept would be x and then a 0 value. So in essence, you could technically write a t-chart, and we'll just use y for right now instead of f of x, where you could plug in a 0 for x, and that would give you some number for y, and that would be your y-intercept. Then you could reverse that process, and I know this seems a little strange, but you could actually plug in a little 0 for y, and then solve back for the x value and get a number for the x value, and that would actually give you your x-intercept. So that's basically the process of finding the x and the y-intercept. Now, if you do this enough times, some patterns start to emerge. And so you can see that right here in the middle of this particular section of the page, that slope is actually turns out to be the negative value of a over b every single time. And so this is a little shortcut, if you will. We also have a couple shortcuts for the x and the y-intercept. If you take the c value and divide it by a, you're going to get the x-intercept. And if you take the c value and divide it by b, you end up getting the y-intercept. So that is going to give us two methods here. We can either use the simple t-chart method of plugging in a 0 for x and y, or we can use the shortcut method of finding the slope, the x-intercept, and or the y-intercept. And so let's just look at an example here. So for example number 2, we've shown on the actual example the t-chart method. And so what we've basically got going on here is if I took an x and a y and I plugged in a 0 for the y, you can see in our first part of the example we actually end up getting a 6 for the x. And then of course I can do the opposite side of that process. I can actually plug in a 0 for the x, and that gives me a y of 4. And that's going to give me 2 points. That's going to give me an x-intercept, and that's going to give me a y-intercept. And all I would actually have to do is simply plot those 2 points and draw the line. And so that would be a very easy way for us to do this. Now, what if we get a very complicated set of equations? Maybe we want to do a shortcut. And so if we remember, our shortcuts for the x-intercept are going to be the c value over the a value. And of course the a value in this, and we should probably go ahead and show these values, is going to be 2. And so what happens is we get an x-intercept of 6, but keep in mind that has to be written as a point of 6, 0. So that 6 is actually representing the x-coordinate or the x value. The y-intercept could be done by a shortcut of the c value divided by the b value, which in this case is 3, and that's going to give us a value of 4. Now keep in mind that is the y-coordinate of the intercept, and of course we come up with the same 2 points using a little shortcut. Okay, and so then again we just plot those 2 points and graph the following line. So that's a quick example of how we would use standard form, and we would use the intercepts method of finding the x-intercept and the y-intercept, and you can see that those are the direct places where they cross the x and the y axis. Alright, so that's a good little example for you to follow next.